Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Having some slight technical difficulties here with our stream to Facebook. This is Patrick Lonergan of Gallatin County Emergency Management, and I'm going to be helping facilitate our community briefing today with the participants. We're going to go ahead and turn over to Matt Kelly, the health officer at this time.
Good morning. Thanks, Patrick. As you said, my name is Matt Kelly. I'm health officer with Gallatin City-County Health Department. My remarks today are going to be a bit briefer than normal because I want to provide some time and space for some of our partners to talk about the work we've been doing together. We wanted to make this week's briefing more of an opportunity to talk about our partners in this response, to discuss the community and their work over the past several weeks. But I do want to provide a brief update on our pandemic response on the epidemiological situation. As many of you know, we had our first 2 laboratory confirmed COVID cases in a couple of weeks this week. Those are the two cases in West Yellowstone, are the first cases that we've had in a little over 2 weeks. We're working closely with our partners in West and the family impacted to reduce the risk of spread. And we're getting excellent cooperation all the way around. These are the first cases we've identified in West, but what I want to say is this: they're facing the same types of things that we're seeing all over the nation, all over the county, and we'll get through it together. I can also tell you that we've been working closely with Yellowstone National Park and Superintendent Cam Shawley as the Park Service makes decisions about reopening Yellowstone. You know, from a public health perspective, there's real concern with the idea of bringing in thousands of visitors from all over the nation. That poses significant disease transmission risks. I would also want to recognize that not opening the park poses risks, and that our commitment is to balance those concerns as the Park Service makes decisions about reopening. And we'll continue to work with them as partners, and we'll continue to try and make sure that we're being the voice of public health in that conversation, which has to also include the voices of the local communities and economic development. And finally, I want to say that our staff at the health department has been working all day, every day for the past number of weeks to assist businesses as they move to reopen under the governor's directive and the emergency rule from the Gallatin City-County Board of Health. Our staff is reaching out to business owners in a collaborative way. While there's been some focus on enforcement mechanisms, this really has been a collaborative partnership. And that's happening in a number of ways. It's complicated and it's unprecedented work, and we're reaching out in a number of ways. One is our call center is staffed 7 days a week to answer questions for businesses that want to call. We've also hosted 12 webinars over the last week and a half for different types of businesses to allow them to ask questions. And this week, our staff of registered sanitarians was really out in force from West Yellowstone to Three Forks to Belgrade and downtown Bozeman, visiting bars, restaurants, other licensed establishments, and to help answer questions about how they can open in a safe way. And so far, we visited more than 120 restaurants, bars, casinos, and convenience stores. And all that work will continue into the foreseeable future. Some of you know the governor lifted some measures effective next Friday related to gyms, theaters, and we're going to be continuing to work with them. I think the local Gallatin City-County Board of Health will meet sometime in the middle of next week to consider the local rule that would allow us to move forward in the way that is envisioned and laid out by the governor. All of this work is an example of the many ways our community has banded together to find our way through this pandemic. In pursuing the work, the health department and our incident command has had enormous support throughout from partners inside and outside of government. I think back to March 13th, what seems like years ago in some ways. It was before we even had our first case, and we gathered in the community room at the courthouse where the county commission meets. And many of our partners came together to talk about how we were preparing for the challenges ahead. And later that day, we got our first case in Gallatin County. And that was before we knew Gallatin County would have more cases than anywhere else in the state. And since then, tens of thousands of Americans have died from the virus, and many more have been hospitalized. It's been a long, challenging road. But throughout that, our partners have worked beside us. Our partners have held elections. We've prepared for a surge in the need of the hospital. We've created online learning opportunities for our children in K-12 schools and for college students at MSU. Law enforcement has found ways to run detention centers safely and to be partners with us as we reopen. And our elected officials have been responsive and supportive throughout this. And I don't want to lose track of how much we've done together. As daunting as the challenges are ahead, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. We're not done. There's still a lot of work to do. I think it's important to recognize that I'm proud of our community. I'm proud to have been part of this response because our partners have done it together. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and turn it back over to Patrick, who's going to turn it over to some of our partners so they can talk a little bit more about some of the work they're doing and some of the communications that they want to have with the community. Patrick?
Thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Mark Williams, the Chief Medical Officer for Bozeman Health.
Hey, thank you, Patrick, and thanks for the opportunity to participate in the press conference. I'm just going to share a little bit about where Bozeman Health is. I do want to echo the level of remarkable cooperation that we've seen with all the parties. It's actually been a silver lining in all these activities because they will help us deal with future challenges with COVID. But at the end of the day, Bozeman Health remains prepared to deal with COVID surges into the end of the year and beyond. Our viral triage clinics will remain open. Everything that we've been doing up to date largely remains in place. For us to be able to maintain that level of preparation, our highest priority remains properly equipping and protecting our healthcare workers, our physicians, and all of our other teammates so that we can help in case of a COVID epidemic and treat our community. So when we say now at Bozeman Health, what does it mean by retaining our surge capabilities? What we are doing specifically is we have a 30-day supply of personal protective equipment for our teammates. We're basically maintaining 25% of our inpatient capacity should we have a sudden need to admit a significant number of COVID positive patients. Our testing capabilities continue to increase to some degree. As you all know, testing capabilities remain limited largely across the country. And so for us not to burden the state lab testing capabilities, we are also seeking our own in-house testing capabilities. And we've had a remarkable relationship with Montana State University that's helped to facilitate much of that. With that being said, we're also reopening and providing those other services that we had to curtail during the COVID epidemic. So May 4th was our official date to begin that expansion. So in 2-week phases, we're basically increasing the work that's being done in not only the ambulatory clinics, but in our operating rooms and procedure rooms. And so far that's going very well, but we have learned that sometimes reopening is a little bit difficult than actually closing down these services. All of our elective procedures, those patients that undergo those procedures and surgeries are having COVID testing done by in-house capabilities. So again, we're reviewing that every 2 weeks. We're continuing this collaboration with the county and the state and the hospitals throughout Montana, mainly through the Montana Hospital Association. And just like everyone else, so the businesses, the schools, we're emphasizing to our team members and everybody who enters our building that social distancing, hand hygiene, masking, and all those other important measures stay in place. We are maintaining our incident command model, and I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Callie Kujawa, to explain what that means. She has been our real leader she has been our incident commander throughout this period.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, we have many key leaders on our incident command team who have been working tirelessly developing our reopening and readiness plans. They're vetting those plans through our logistics team, and they're operationalizing all of our strategies and tactics using a cohesive approach. We have some specific key performance indicators we're monitoring internally to gauge our implementation and reopening success. And I've been glad to see that on our performance indicators, we've been doing very well so far. We have daily briefs and debriefs as a Bozeman Health Incident Command team, and we have multiple coordination calls with the local agencies and other incident commands throughout the county and state so that we can continue to partner and meet all of the needs of our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Callie. Next up, we have Gallatin County Commissioner Joe Skinner.
Thank you, Patrick. I'd just like to start out by thanking the citizens of Gallatin County for being so responsible and for really taking the situation seriously and understanding how complicated the situation is. I'm sure 2 years from now we can look back and say how we could have or should have done things differently, but right now we're all trying to just use the best information we have to try to balance community health and keep our economy in recovery and keeping it strong. So I think we're all working to that end and working very well together. I'm just going to hit on a couple of things Gallatin County is involved in, and I'm sure some of the others will expand on that. One thing we're doing is working with the city of Bozeman, Belgrade, West Yellowstone, hiring a temporary position to oversee recovery efforts. And I think we really want to make sure that local businesses have the technical support to take advantage of the governor's programs for the COVID relief funds. So I think we're all working together to try to make the situation for businesses as easy a transition as we can. Another thing that we're doing is the county is trying to expand the viral wastewater testing that the city of Bozeman is doing, working with West Yellowstone and Big Sky to expand that operation so we can virally test wastewater to see what's happening in those communities. I think West Yellowstone, Big Sky are huge economic drivers in the county. We recognize that. That's why we are contributing support and money to help them do that. We want them to be able to reopen safely and to be able to advertise that they're open for business when that time comes. Other than that, internally, we are just like any other business. We're trying to reopen. We're trying to keep county government functioning and still comply with the governor's orders. So that's what we're working on, and I'm sure some others can expand on some of those things that I just mentioned. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Skinner. Next up, we have Gallatin County Clerk and Recorder Eric Semerod.
Thank you, Patrick. So I'm going to be talking about the election coming up in June. We just had an election this week. There was essentially a countywide election. We sent out ballots all over the county, other than to Belgrade school district area. But the rest of the county had an election. We counted 22,000 ballots on Tuesday and had a turnout of over 40%. And throughout that whole process, we had to, conduct the entire election within the social distancing parameters of the pandemic. It was not easy. Preparing and mailing and receiving and counting ballots is not an easy job to do in this environment. Moving forward into the primary, those ballots are going out today. We're mailing over 67,000 ballots, and the ballots will be returned to us postage prepaid. So if you are worried about returning your ballot, there's no cost to the voter up front here. Of course, there is through their taxes. But that way, we encourage people to not come in to vote or deliver their ballots. And hopefully that we'll have as few people as possible doing that. However, we recognize that not having polling places is very inconvenient for many people. And so we were going to be having ballot drop-offs at every single polling place, kind of like we have had here at the courthouse for the last several years. There'll be drive-through. The people working in those will be election officials, and they can receive the ballots. There'll be ballot boxes there. And of course, they will be provided with masks and gloves and sanitizer and everything for that. But we do feel like we needed to provide people with a way to return those ballots conveniently, like they do on a normal polling place election. Those locations are at all the polling places. If you have ballots, you can't return them to, because it's a statewide election, you can't return them to places outside of Gallatin County, but all the polling places in Gallatin County can receive them. And you could take, like if you're a voter in Belgrade, you could deliver your ballot here in Bozeman. It doesn't matter which place you go to. They're all interchangeable. You just have to drop the ballots off there. And then also in that same note, we will be accepting ballots here so that'll be on election day, those drive-throughs. But here at the courthouse, we will have the drive-through ballot drop-off starting the week before the election to try to keep people from coming in, because we often get lines of people dropping off ballots prior to an election. And so we're going to have that again on the curb for the week prior, starting on Wednesday, May 27th. Also, to eliminate the need to come into the office, the governor's order for allowing us to conduct this election by mail, because it was the final decision was actually made by the commission, the county commission, to allow us to do this. The late registration date is moved way later than usual. Usually it's 30 days before we'd already be in that late registration period. But now that is also ends on May 26th. And so you can not have to come into the courthouse to register to vote and get a ballot up until that date. And so what you can do now is we have set it up so you can register to vote electronically, but it is not an electronic registration. You have to actually use the standard Secretary of State's registration application form, fill it out, print it out, sign it with a wet ink signature, and then either scan or take a photo of that and email that to us. That can be sent to gallatin.elections@gallatin.mt.gov, and we can receive those electronically that way and get you registered and mail you a ballot for this mail ballot election. You know, conducting the election in having social distancing is very difficult. But we're doing what we can to encourage people to not come into the office. This late registration begins the middle of the last week of May. So up till then, you can do everything without coming in by doing this electronic registration. And the last couple things, we appreciate it if when you mail your ballot into us, seal your envelopes with tape rather than licking the envelope. Just a little bit of extra security for the workers here, and just ask for your patience and compliance in keeping us all safe. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Belgrade City Manager Ted Barkley. You're still muted, Ted.
Okay, we good?
You're good.
Very good. Good morning, everybody. This is Ted Barkley in Belgrade. First of all, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the Belgrade community for this opportunity, and also to a number of individuals that have contributed to our successful management of this situation. First, Pat Lonergan of Gallatin County Emergency Management, who's helped us all coordinate and stay informed at every step of the way. Matt Kelly and his staff at the Gallatin County Health Department, whose leadership and steady hand has provided the knowledge and guidance and support that helped us make good, informed decisions. Britt Fontenot and Anna Roseberry, who aren't as visible, but they're with the city of Bozeman, and their leadership, data collection, strategy development, and understanding and mitigating economic impacts and planning our recovery have been invaluable. And for a community like Belgrade, who does not have a lot of internal economic development resources, the sharing and support from Bozeman has been and will continue to be critical. Of course, the City of Belgrade staff, and especially Chief E.J. Clark of the Police Department, who is our emergency manager, Christy Gee from the Belgrade Chamber for her business assistance and referrals, Paul Reichert of Prospera and his staff, who've been providing business assistance and recovery services, Rob Gilmore at the Northern Rocky Mountain Economic Development District. Again, these people aren't super visible yet, but they've reached out to about 150 businesses and conducted a detailed survey of 249 businesses, so that as we move to economic recovery, we know what the needs are and who to reach out to. Our mayor, Russ Nelson, has worked with a number of businesses. He's also a banker in his day job, but getting federal loan and grant money into the hands of local businesses that need it, along with Wade Pell of First Interstate Bank and other business bankers who have really stepped up and worked hard, looking ahead beyond COVID itself, but to the economic recovery afterwards, which is one of our major focuses. Bozeman Health, who's kept us informed, and also many employees at Bozeman Health have been in harm's way, serving the victims of the virus, and all of our first responders as well. All of these people are heroes to Belgrade, and I want to make sure that that we recognize them and others as well. The level of communication between people and agencies has been remarkable. I've been involved in managing cities for almost 35 years, and this process has been seamless. It's been open. People have been accessible, and it truly is a remarkable situation, and is being well managed in what I believe is a very remarkable place. City of Belgrade closed municipal facilities on March 17th, and for the most part, they remain closed. We have continued to provide virtually all services in one form or another during the shutdown, with much of our staff working remotely. Starting next Monday, May 11th, we will be moving staff back into City Hall. We'll be opening playgrounds, and we will have limited open access to the city court. People can call our general number, 388-3760, if they have questions about what's open and what's available. And assuming continued good news, we plan to reopen City Hall with appropriate distancing and sanitation protocols on May 18th, a week from Monday. Our energy will hopefully then be more focused on economic recovery and business restarts than on managing the disease and its process as well. People of Belgrade and the entire Gallatin Valley are also the real heroes here, because they responded responsibly and effectively and essentially stopped the first wave. Couldn't be happier about that. Our message now is that it's tempting to resume life as usual, but that would invite a second wave. It's extremely important as we open up to observe the distancing and sanitation protocols. That's the news from Belgrade.
Thank you, Ted. Next up, we have Big Sky Resort Area Tax Board Chairman Kevin Germain.
Patrick, thank you very much. You know, as I was preparing for the speaking points today, it's basically where have we been, where are we headed, and what are the reopening plans. You know, collaboration has really been throughout this whole pandemic, and it's not just been the government entities, but it's been our private businesses, and it's been our citizens. It's been an amazing spirit of collaboration as everybody has risen to this, you know, very interesting and just interesting times. So where we've been, you know, the first consideration across Big Sky was the health and safety of our community and our residents. And, you know, a very notable thing happened on March 15th where Big Sky Resort and Cross Harbor Capital made the call to close down the resorts, and this was well in advance of any government mandate. That was a very difficult decision at the time, but it pales in comparison to the decisions that are being made now by the governor and our health department on the reopening plans. So a big thanks to the private businesses for shutting down and stopping any spread of a pandemic here in Big Sky. If you look at what was happening nationally, you saw in Vail Resorts as well as in Sun Valley, Idaho, ski areas really became these epicenters for the state. So very thankful to the businesses, the major businesses in our town made those decisions early. From the Resort Tax Board, we really quickly turned our attention to where we can help. And loosely, the Resort Tax Board controls the purse strings here in Big Sky with our public dollars that are collected from resort tax. So we focused on two areas, both funding and collaboration. On the funding front, the week of the 15th, we worked with the other philanthropic funding partners in the Big Sky community, the Yellowstone Club Community Foundation, the Moonlight Community Foundation, and the Spanish Peaks Foundation. And by the end of that week, by the 20th, that Friday, we had raised $2 million to help not just the Big Sky community, but Gallatin County through this pandemic. Roughly $1 million of those dollars was earmarked for our medical system, and the other $1 million was earmarked towards the social needs that are arising from the pandemic. Resort tax dollars have strings attached. We can only spend those dollars within our resort tax boundary. And so as we were talking with Bozeman Deaconess and our Big Sky Medical Center, it became clear that they had some pretty large needs to help respond to the pandemic. We had 4 unfinished hospital rooms that money went to fund. And of course, everybody realizes one of the biggest needs was ventilators. So that week we worked with Bozeman Deaconess to fund and order 8 ventilators. The 3 that the resort tax purchase had to stay here in Big Sky, but the Yellowstone Club Community Foundation stepped up and said, we'll buy 5 more and have those used throughout the health system. So I was very proud to see the philanthropy going on. We also helped purchase analyzers and, as I mentioned, finish those 4 rooms. The other $1 million went towards the social needs. So the food bank, our mental health services, the businesses and the nonprofits, and last but certainly not least, all the individuals and families that were suddenly out of work and how could we work with them. That's what we did on the funding front. And then we worked in parallel on the coordination. As most people know, Big Sky is unincorporated. We don't have a town council. We don't have a mayor. And so Resort Tax filled the role as the coordinator. And we started having bi-weekly calls with all the operational partners, and that would be the fire department, first and foremost, our medical center, the fire department, the sheriff, our food bank, mental health. So we were having these bi-weekly calls to have people give updates and identify their needs. And on those calls, the needs were being addressed. One partner would say, we got that. If you need PPA, we have extra. So the coordination was excellent. Those have now gone to bi-monthly. We also have bi-monthly calls with our funding partners with the foundations. So that's where we've been, where we're headed. You know, we're very hopeful that plans can be developed and implemented late summer to safely reopen our community to out-of-state tourists. We're 100% tourism driven, much like our sister city, West Yellowstone. So we had a meeting earlier this week with Matt Kelly and the Gallatin County Health Team to talk about what are some ideas we can help work on together for testing and monitoring. We understand the burden that out-of-staters are going to bring, and we want to make sure that when we reopen, it's safe, and it's safe for our Gallatin County residents. Commissioner Skinner mentioned the partnership with MSU on the wastewater testing. I'm proud to say just today, the resort tax funded $80,000 towards that effort. So great to be partners with Gallatin County and our health department, as well as MSU on that testing and monitoring effort. So what are our plans for reopening? Well, first, we're following the state and the county mandates, and we want to make sure that we toe the line, and we have to figure out a way to do this safely. Just yesterday, Big Sky Resort did announce that the golf course is going to open on May 22nd. Biking and scenic rides are going to open on June 26th. So we do have reopening plans. The restaurants continue their pickup, and they're gradually reopening their dining rooms. And I'll just say it's a great time for our local Montanans to come to Big Sky without the out-of-state tourists. So we've really seen our community and county come together during this time, both the private sectors, as well as our citizens. There's been a tremendous outpouring of philanthropy and volunteers. It is the strength of this collaboration that's going to get us through this pandemic and set us up for success on the other side. This continued county-wide collaboration is critical, especially as Matt mentioned with in context of Yellowstone National Park opening. We really have to be well coordinated and helping each other out. And I will end with just a huge thanks to Matt Kelly, Patrick Lonergan, Keith Wilson, and our county commissioners. The collaboration and leadership has really been appreciated here in Big Sky. So thanks, Patrick.
Thank you. Next up, we have Bozeman Mayor Chris Mell.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Mell, and I have a flag in the background. I thought that was pretty cool. And I see Sean has a flag and a Montana flag. So good on Three Forks. They got it going on. I really appreciate being invited to join. I want to keep it short and just because I'm echoing what others have said. I hope that the viewers can see us in kind of an enhanced Brady Bunch style at some point. Just all the people coming together to work for common purposes, to me, is exciting. And frankly, it's vital. Given the challenges we face. But it's been a fantastic performance led by Matt Kelly, but so many people, it's almost impossible to name them all. And we see a small representation on this call. And so I want to thank everyone for their hard work and also thank the community. We started off with a lot of cases, and I know we were concerned, but people have done a fantastic job from the school system and kids on one end to retirees on the other and businesses and everyone in between. It's really been a moment for me to say that I'm very proud to be from Gallatin Valley and Gallatin County because of all the hard work that literally thousands and thousands of people have done. So thank you very much. A little Bozeman update. Speaking of thanks, thanks to the voters and citizens for passing the Parks and Trails bond earlier this week, or district. That will go far for us in terms of continuing to provide for that quality of life and experience that people expect and to pass it on to future generations. I think COVID in an unusual way reminded us of how important it is to get out, to see our neighbors, to be on the trails, to recreate a little bit close to home, and to be able to do it safely. We're certainly going to have to balance that new tool with all the other budget turmoil that we have. It's an interesting economic time, to say the least. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of difficult decisions ahead for all of our budgets in this valley, and so we'll certainly be balancing that as we go forward. Ted already mentioned some of the economic development that stole a little bit of the thunder, and I think rightly so. That also has been a tremendous effort from Prospera, the Northern Rockies Economic Development Group, to the banks, who literally worked, I think, through the weekend, through the night, to try and process loans for small businesses here in the valley. It was an inspiring performance. And a number of city staff worked on that, but so did an enormous number of citizens volunteering their time to make that happen. On a note for Bozeman, the Public Safety Center, we've opened some of the bids. We are on time and on budget, and we will be starting construction in the coming months, and that should not only be good for our safety in the long run, but it's an economic driver. Going to employ several hundred people as we get that going over on Rouse and Oak next to the fairgrounds. And then lastly, it's been mentioned, the city also is slowly reopening. It'll start next week on Thursdays, the tentative idea in the Stiff building, where Public Works leadership is headed, but also engineering, community development, the planners, building inspectors. They'll have some set specific schedules. See our webpage, bozeman.net, for that. But mostly just to thank everyone on the phone and on the Zoom call and our Brady Bunch screen, so to speak, of we couldn't have done it alone. And it's a reminder that we all have particular responsibilities and goals, but together in a crisis, we are in a sense, we've gotten through the hard part, and now we're hopefully going to work together in a sense on a barn raising as to what we can do to slowly restructure and rebuild our economy in the safest way possible as we go forward. So thank you, Patrick, very much.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Three Forks Mayor Sean Gifford.
Good afternoon. Thank everyone. I just wanted to give a brief summary on how the municipal government, the community of Three Forks, has reacted to the coronavirus pandemic and what our plans entail for the short term going forward for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Our initial response began in early March. Our municipal staff established lines of communication with Gallatin County and local nonprofits in preparation to react to decisions from higher government bodies and the public impact of coronavirus. Prior to the City Council meeting on March 10th, we solicited citizen comments as the situation was developing. We live streamed the council meeting and declared a state of emergency on the 18th with the following initial actions. Restricted access to City Hall and Public Works building, staggered shifts to limit social interaction but maintain essential services, allowed those who could to work from home, enacted a strict self-quarantine of city employees exhibiting illness, closed city parks to the public, but we did keep the trails, ponds, and open spaces open. We also discontinued the enforcement of some city decay ordinances in order to shift resources and staff to assist the post office to complete the census mailers. I met with our nonprofit organizations and established a helpline for those requiring basic needs support such as food delivery, medical supplies, etc., to support self-quarantine measures. We received cloth masks from the Montana Robe Company, a local clothing manufacturer in Belgrade, the American Legion Auxiliary, Lazy Quilting, and several individuals in the community, which we distributed to our staff and nonprofit volunteers, community members, and those delivering supplies to helpline requestees. It became clear early on that the economic impacts from the national, state, and county response was going to be felt by our community before the public health effects from COVID-19. In response to the growing reality, we undertook the following actions: waived processing fees for online payments, waived late fees for utilities, established a system program for municipal service payments, and we also received several donations from the public to be applied towards water and sewer bills. And we cleared the city council agendas except for the basics while the public was restricted from attending in person. In April, it became clear that the coronavirus sped was disproportionately allocated in areas of high population density. As reports of new cases in Montana and Gallatin County began to drop, citizens and municipal staff urged to begin reconsideration on protection policies established in March with updated information about the coronavirus. We used established lines of communication with the county and state to develop plans for a phased reopening of municipal controlled public spaces. This began on April 27th with the following actions: Public Works disinfectant procedures on city parks, 2 of which are now open to the public. Open City Hall to floodplain and zoning business that requires in-person coordination to complete. An increased staff allocation to city sewers to mitigate the issues from increased strain on the sewer systems from unflushable materials and increased use. Although it appears the effects of the pandemic have passed, is not necessarily the case. As the rest of the county and state and county opens up, there is renewed risk for virus spread and a negative impact. It's also clear that the economic impact is currently the main issue for the city of Three Forks. I encourage individuals to continue to utilize our self-help hotline. Federal and state programs for emergency and operational funding have been made available, and I want to point to the state's Chamber of Commerce website for more details on those programs. I also want to stress, this is just the beginning. We're initially taken by complete surprise with the rapid spread of the unknown virus. However, at this time has gone on and new information is available about the risk, individuals, businesses, and organizations, to include the municipal government, must find a way to balance the public health with the economic health. Towards the end in the future, we plan to do the following. Our city council on 12 May with the optionality to attend by Zoom or in person. Our meeting will be held in a larger facility with indoor and outdoor seating to allow for 6 foot of social distancing between individuals. The agenda for the city council will be expanded now with public participation. Sewer and Water Committee report on a plan of action to increase Three Forks water supply and to improve the water quality will be discussed on May 12th. And we have canceled the triathlon in June for public health concerns and discourage an influx of non-local individuals to the area. We have not made a decision on other summer events to include the rodeo. We'll be watching the situation to develop as we relax social interactions. I want to communicate that we'll encourage help from our citizens in implementing and evaluating new guidelines or lifting restrictions. It is your city government and your right to be heard and your concern about the decision that affects you. We serve you, but we do so in cooperation with our citizens. I want to end by thanking so many groups who have stepped up. Our public works, who took the disinfectant process that used to last 6 hours for the city parks, and now it only takes them about 3. They outfitted a city truck with a cleaning solution and the tools to be able to effectively disinfect the park equipment. I want to thank the Montana Road Company for donating face masks to the city, Be Lazy Quilting and our call center volunteers, Charlie Christensen and Angela Lair, and citizens who continue to limit the spread of coronavirus. I also want to thank the American Legion and our great group of churches for their tireless efforts in supporting the citizens in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Head from Basin Rural Fire District Fire Chief Shane Grube for West Yellowstone.
Hello, Patrick. Thanks for inviting me to the call today. I'm just going to give kind of a brief overview of West Yellowstone. West Yellowstone is currently, 100% economy-based tourism. That's what generates or runs our economy. The population in West Yellowstone averages around 1,300 year-round residents, and that expands to approximately 16,000 nightly during the summer, making us the second largest city in Gallatin County during that time frame. West Yellowstone has approximately 2,300 motel units for rent. This includes motels, hotels, and nightly rental facilities, and approximately 1,214 campsites located within the basin. The fire district typically sees a 200% increase in call volume over these summer months, June, July, August, and September. So where have we been so far this year? Well, the town of West Yellowstone and the fire district started working with community health partners, Bozeman Health and Gallatin County's Health Department, along with Gallatin County Emergency Management Department in January of this year, and started talking about planning and reducing risk due to our tourist-based economy. Where we're going now. We're currently actively trying to get additional testing set up within the community for not only our local citizens and summer workers, but for the tourists that will be coming through our area. One of the things that we're going to need to do in support of that testing is also we're going to need to secure, places to house folks if we find issues. And then we're also having to use and work with the local businesses and restaurants to support those folks alike. We're doing this through, working with our partners, working with our community businesses to achieve this. We are currently working on the funding piece to make all this happen. One of the things that has been really good is the fact that with the partnerships in the last few days, in the last 2 weeks, there's been a lot of information pushed out to our community that's been put out by the health department as far as best practices for housing of seasonal workers, hotels, best practices, retail best practices, getting that word out. That way the tourists coming to our community know we have done everything in our power to keep them safe and our community safe. So thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Next up, we have Belgrade School District Superintendent Godfrey Saunders.
Thanks, Patrick. We are at the point now where we're trying to prepare for the fall. I'd like to give a huge shout out to Matt Kelly and his team for what they've done for us this spring. And we couldn't have done some things without them. We have been grappling with issues like graduation. Matt has given us some great guidance in that area, and we're going to proceed with our graduation ceremony. Without him, that would have been difficult. We've been working with Bozeman School District leadership team and to come up with some areas in which we have similar needs, so that we both aren't reinventing the wheel, and to streamline the process so that we're in areas where we overlap and the similarities, we're on the same page. And that we just had our final meeting yesterday, and we're putting together a team next week to an operational team and an instructional team to come up with plans for operating the schools and also plans for educating kids and keeping things safe for our teachers and our students and our classified staff, our custodians. We think we're ahead of the game right now, but it's going to take some time. Another issue that we're struggling with has to do with any learning gaps that our students might be facing come fall. But jumping on it so soon will give us some time to plan for that as well. One of the issues, another issue that we've been dealing with has to do with technology and also having a unified platform for delivering online instruction. Our school board allowed us time this spring by staying with the offsite learning to better plan for that process in the fall. There's a high probability that that's going to be our main platform, along with some face-to-face instruction. So right now, those are our challenges, and we're really grateful for the community and at large, not just Belgrade, but Bozeman as well. But our citizens have been really great. People have been civil about this entire process, this entire issue. I can't say that about every community I've read about, but our folks have been great. Teachers have stepped up to the plate. We've worked with the our food service folks and our bus drivers have stepped up to the plate to deliver meals. There's no pressure there, so we really found out a great deal about our staff, and we're grateful for that. We've been working with the senior center in helping them with overflow. So that's another thing that we've been able to do because of COVID. That's a positive thing. That's a silver lining. So it's brought us closer together with that community as well. Other than that, we're grateful and thankful for all the guidance that you guys have given us and all the hard work. Thanks.
Okay, next up we have Bozeman School District Superintendent, Bob Connors.
Thank you, Patrick. And I want to also jump on thanking Matt Kelly and both of your teams. I appreciate your leadership during this time. I also want to acknowledge all the health workers, the first responders, and the transportation industry that have allowed us to keep the wheels moving as we've gone forward this last unprecedented month and a half or so. I do want to acknowledge, like Chris did, that to thank Bozeman for supporting our high school transition levy is very important as we move into. I do want to acknowledge that the Gallatin High School is on schedule, and the renovations for Bozeman High will begin real soon. And so that we want to thank those people for keeping us on schedule and allowing us, for whatever the fall looks like, to at least we'll be physically ready as we move on. We are continuing with off-site learning. We're developing lessons and plan on finishing the school year out strong. We're going to be releasing timelines for dropping off school district property, the Chromebooks, textbooks, things like that, and then the pickup of any student's personal property. So that'll be coming out. As Godfrey mentioned, we too will be having graduation. Our graduation will be June 7th. What that looks like, exactly, we don't know, but we're working it out. We're looking at Van Winkle Stadium or Bobcat Stadium at this time. We will limit our guests for social distancing in the stands. And the other thing we will do is we'll provide masks for the graduating seniors. The first and foremost idea is to get our 508 seniors together on this day. We are the largest graduating class. The next largest AA is 400 students at Billings West. So we have a little bit of different than some of the other districts, different problems, not problems. We have different issues to deal with. They're not problems. The next phase will be to expand that number of guests as we get permission from the health department and the health officials to figure out what's going to work, the police department, different things like that to make it a smooth transition. But we do want to remind the people that do attend, if we do have guests, that it is their responsibility for their behavior with social distancing and any of the rules that we need to put in place to make sure that our ceremony remains about the seniors. Because that's what graduation is about. It's about the seniors, and we want to make sure that they get the proper send-off that they deserve going through this unprecedented time. But also remember that the graduation ceremony is volunteer. It's not a mandatory event. We want to make sure you're comfortable being at that event as we move forward. Here's what we do know on May 8th. Butte is hosting their graduation at the Butte Civic Center. They're allowing 2 guests. Great Falls is holding their graduation at Four Seasons Arena with no guests, 0 guests involved. And Billings will be at the Metra, allowing 2 guests per graduate. We're going to work on reopening the Wilson building here for normal school business in the near future. We're working on entry and exit plans, social distancing, and appropriate interaction. We want to make sure our people are safe along with people that come in and have to conduct school business here at the Wilson. We're looking to see if summer programs and camps are feasible to offer. And we're looking to help the district partners to reestablish contacts with the students who would utilize these programs in the summer and after school in the fall. We are working to, like Godfrey mentioned, we are working to see what the heck fall is going to look like. We'll have to develop plans to take into account different contingencies. The work will continue throughout the summer, but we do realize one important fact is blended learning is different than blended school. And blended learning is a in-person and virtual learning platform similar to colleges utilize. Blended school would be somewhere of in-person and off-site learning. They're 2 different things, and we recognize that. And hopefully everybody will come to that realization. Do want to thank our teachers and our administrators and our staff for continuing as we go along, trying to keep everybody busy, trying to keep everybody working through this pandemic, and hopefully we'll be ready to go when we get the good to go signed. So thanks everybody for doing what they're doing, and all of our elected officials. I really appreciate what you're getting done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Montana State University spokesperson Michael Becker.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm going to try to keep the remarks short just because we're getting to the end here, but just a quick update right now. Montana State University is of course wrapping up our academic year, and we're beginning this week to gradually and safely welcome our employees back to campus with all appropriate social distancing, hand hygiene, and other precautions. We can't emphasize enough just how appreciative we've been for the hard work of our faculty and our staff to make it a unique, this unique semester a successful one for our students. And we're here wishing our graduates well as we go through virtual commencement celebrations instead of our traditional in-person ceremony. I'd like to echo what a lot of folks ahead of me have said so far. The university wants to stress just how immensely grateful we are for the open lines of communication we've had with partners such as the City of Bozeman, Gallatin City-County Health Department, Bozeman Fire, County Emergency Management, and Bozeman Health Deaconess Hospital. You know, in all of our efforts throughout the pandemic emergency, the input of those folks has been incredibly valuable in helping the university refine our protocols, our sanitation procedures, and our incident management, and more. We couldn't be prouder to be not only a partner, but also the beneficiary of so much expertise and experience in the community. So just to all those folks, thank you so much for your help. And you know, we're really looking forward to being a partner in the future.
Thank you, Michael. At this point, we'll turn it back over to Health Officer Matt Kelly.
Yeah, I don't want to prolong the presentation a lot longer, but I think I probably speak for everybody who had a chance to speak today in saying that we all, while our jobs happen to include the duties to be forward-facing public officials and to be out front having these conversations, I want to acknowledge that every single one of us has dozens and hundreds of people standing behind us who nobody ever hears about. In my department, it's sanitarians who are out in restaurants as we speak, public health nurses who are doing contact investigations, social workers who are helping people maintain quarantine, admin staff that's keeping everything running. When I'm in the courthouse, I see election workers and volunteers who are coming out, putting masks on and doing that work. People in facilities and IT continue coming to work, keeping us running, allowing us to do this sort of thing. Our staff in our Joint Information Center and our call center who are working every day to get the best information they can out to people and allow us to do things like this. We all have legions of people standing behind us, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that. And finally, I want to say to this whole community, some people who you don't see every day. Patrick Lonergan is on this broadcast today. He's usually not. And Kevin Larson works with him at Gallatin County Emergency Management. And I'll tell you, I've had some sleepless nights over the last 6 weeks about a lot of things. One thing that makes me sleep better is the experience working with Gallatin County Emergency Management and Patrick and Kevin and the team that they can bring surround it. And we're dealing with a public health emergency right now, a public health crisis. I can tell the community that if we have an earthquake, if we have some other sort of event, I feel better after going through this experience, having had the opportunity to be able to work with Patrick and his team. The resources we have here, the facility that we have access to here, and most importantly, Kevin and Patrick's ability to bring people together have been just an enormous asset. And everything that every resource that we spend to have the ability to do this is in my mind, makes me sleep better at night. So I want to make sure that we spend the time to acknowledge that. They stand in the background often, and I want to make sure we say thank you to everybody that's standing behind us. With that, I want to open it up to questions. I think we have some reporters on the call. Patrick is going to play air traffic controller on that, I think. And let us know who you want to answer your question when you ask the question will be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so for the reporters on the line, if you're on the computer, you should have a raise your hand button that you can select. If you happen to be called in on the phone, you can press *9. And we have Jay McClendon. Go ahead with your questions.
This question is for Matt Kelly. Just wondering, I guess at what point do you think it will be safe to stop wearing masks?
So I think I lost the first part of that question. I heard, when do we think it'll be a safe time to stop wearing masks? But I might have missed the first part of that.
Yeah, just at kind of at what point do you think will be a good time for the public to stop wearing them?
So I think this falls into the category of what we call, it's jargon, but we call it non-pharmaceutical interventions. So things like washing our hands, practicing social distancing and mask wearing. Those are things that we need to continue to do on an ongoing basis. And those are personal decisions, a lot of them. They're small decisions that we make every day. And there's no set time when we're going to be okay to stop doing that. I think anytime people are in settings where they're having a hard time social distancing, the guidance is, and we support the guidance, is to use a clean mask and use it properly. I don't think we could pinpoint a time on the calendar or a particular phase, especially for people who are living with sort of underlying health conditions. I'm hoping that question was directed for me. If not, Dr. Williams is on too, and he might have some thoughts.
No, that answers it. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Jody Helsen. Go ahead, Jody.
Hi there. I have a couple of questions. I hope you're all well, first of all. my questions, I have two questions. And one is, I read that there were 2 more confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Gallatin County. And I was wondering if there's any concern about reopening businesses given that information. And the other question I had is why I have to go to Law and Justice Center on a regular basis, and the sheriff's deputies, nor I would say more than half the people in that building are not wearing masks. And I'm wondering why we are not requiring that.
Is that for me, Jody?
It's for anybody who wants to answer it.
So remind me the first question you had there.
Well, the first question is, I heard that there were 2 more confirmed cases, and I'm wondering, why we are continuing opening. I mean, I know that's not a lot, but by the same token, I think I guess I'm just personally a little concerned about us opening things up when we're still, the curve is still not flattened.
Yeah, I mean, so what we're looking for, and we put the metrics out there that we're going to be looking at on reopening. And we said early on that just having a small number of cases is not something that's going to cause us to climb down and zigzag. What we'd be more concerned with is an ongoing increase in cases over time that would be showing the community spread. What we had this week is 2 cases in the same family associated with some out-of-state travel. We're going to work on that, and we're going to work with the partners in the community to limit spread the best we can. But just having 1 or 2 cases is not going to cause us to back down from the reopening. Because if we did that, we'd never get anywhere. We'd be going back and forth.
Sure.
Related to the Law and Justice Center, I think, I will say that the work that's been happening with law enforcement to really make a difficult situation, to deal with a really difficult situation. I think masks is the most visible thing that people think about. It's not necessarily the most important thing, and it certainly isn't the thing that is going to drive disease transmission. So I think we'll work with law enforcement to help them make those decisions. If law enforcement feels like they can maintain physical distancing without and not have the masks, then I think that's their prerogative. I certainly, if the members of the public want to wear masks, we would encourage that if they feel like it's important. But I'm not going to sit here and nitpick what one organization does or another without having an opportunity to have that conversation. I will say that I met with the county attorney, the district court judges. I work regularly with Sheriff Gutkin. They all take this very seriously, and they're trying to do the right thing. So I'm confident in their willingness to work with us. Our detention center is, I would say, probably one of the most state-of-the-art facilities in terms of being able to hold inmates in a safe way. And some of the things that they're doing have been very proactive and very, very responsive. Meeting with the judges, really them thinking through how they're going to go through and start to have jury trials again. They're really thinking about this in a thoughtful way and thinking about ways that they can do temperature checking. So that's what I would have to say about that. If you have any other questions about what is or isn't happening in particular facilities, I think we need to probably talk to the people who run those facilities.
I just wanted to make you aware that, there's now, it's been for a while that you have to go in and you have to put your bags into, it's kind of like going through TSA at the airport. And those guys are dealing with people coming in and out, and they're not wearing masks. And when I asked them about it, they said, we're not required to. Yet there's just no way that they can, social distance, plus they're handling the bins. I mean, I'm just bringing up a concern that I have. I'm not, I'm not trying to, and I agree with you. I think that Sheriff Goodkin and Jim Anderson has done an amazing job with the prison, with the jail. So I agree. It just concerns me, I guess. And I'm not trying to be alarmist.
So noted. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Freddie Moneris. You muted, Freddie.
Yeah, hello, sorry. I wanted to talk about the West Yellowstone cases, and I was wondering if the family was returning from Montana from a trip or coming to Montana, and if they followed the 14-day quarantine when they got here, and what have you found with the contact tracing that you've done so far about their whereabouts? Where were they after they came to Montana?
So what we said about the two individuals cases that we had, we've said what we're going to say. I think we provided some information that they are in West Yellowstone, and there is some travel associated experience that may lead us to the understanding that these cases are imported cases. But other than that, I'm not going to get into the specifics of who they are because it's a small community and it's frankly, we have to be careful about confidentiality. On the contact tracing piece, we are working with the family. We're working with Chief Guru, who's on the call right now, to make sure we're coordinated. And the other thing I would say is for the people in West Yellowstone, I understand these are their first cases. They're going through what many other communities in the rest of the country have gone through. It's not a time to panic. It's not a time to make major decisions based on just these two cases. But we did want to make sure that we're making some pretty big decisions related to Yellowstone and West Yellowstone, both at the park level, at the local level, at the governor's office level, at the county level. And we want to make sure that as we do that, we're being transparent with what we know is happening at the local level. We're continuing to work with the family, with healthcare providers in West. We'll continue to do tests where we see a necessity to do that. But so far, the level of exposure seems to be pretty manageable. The individuals involved, when they became symptomatic, really tended to lay low. So we think we avoided, massive exposure there. And I think we just need to deal with that as we have with all the other cases and say, we're gonna deal with it in a stepwise way. We're gonna work with the family and we're gonna work with healthcare providers and the community to understand what the exposure is and do testing where it's appropriate. And then let the community know if we do get additional cases.
Okay, thank you, Freddie. Next up, we have Rachel Kramer. Go ahead, Rachel.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
we can.
Okay, perfect. Hi. So I had a question about West Yellowstone preparing for the possible reopening of the park. And I think, Shane, you mentioned the increased testing for both people who live there and for visitors. And can you provide a little bit more information about what that would look like or what you have in mind as the ideal setup?
Well, what we're pushing for right now is to have, we have a location in town, a building that we can set up a viral triage clinic in. We are currently working with community health partners and Bozeman Health on getting on how to step that piece up, and then one of the parts of that is the potential, how are we going to fund that? And so we are working on that right now on the funding piece. We have the plan in place. We just have a couple, more pieces to figure out here. My idea would be to have that up and operational soon as by the time the park opens. So as soon as we have a date, that would be my goal, is to have that up and ready to go for the community.
And with seasonal housing, is there going to be some support to make sure that people aren't in close quarters? Is that what you were saying earlier?
Yes. Yep, that's the other big piece to this equation. And so, working with some community members, we're putting a plan together and have that plan in place on how to make that all work.
Would that look like providing temporary housing, like bringing in trailers, or, I mean,
yeah, it could potentially, we have availability for there's lots of rental properties in here that have been, used more on a nightly basis. But that's where we would look to use that, get rooms available for these folks and then support them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, those are all the questions we currently have in the system. Last opportunity for questions from reporters. Okay, that's everybody, Matt.
Yeah, thank you all for being part of it. I want to stress this isn't a victory lap. We're not here to end anything, but we wanted to bring people together. We're in the middle of this. It's an ongoing effort, and we need to keep people. It's a Friday. As I say every Friday, we want people to go out, find their space, have a great weekend, but continue to control who's in your bubble. Continue to keep cognizant of how many people you're having in contact with, and stay healthy. Thank you all.
Thank you.